It's time to get sexy, so watch Secular Sexuality Live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.
Greetings and salutations, fellow Homo sapiens, and also four-legged creatures that may be watching with you. And welcome back to another episode of The Nonprofits, the show where we discuss news and topics of the day from a skeptical humanist perspective. My name is Cynthia McDonald, and today's topics, that's what they are. And this show is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the separation of religion and government, and promoting positive atheism. And along with me, I have some fellow non-profiteering skeptocrats. I'm going to start with my far left, Malty. Sir,
Hello. How you doing?
how are you?
I'm all right. Thank you
All
for having
right.
me.
All right. I'm looking forward to having this discussion with you. And we also have another alumnus, however you pronounce that word, Mr. Phil Ferguson. How are you today, sir?
Bene, molto bene. Grazie. Thank you for having me on the show.
I was going to try to say something clever back in Italian, but my Italian diction escapes me right now. Maybe I'll sing you an aria later.
Paparazzi, bravo.
I'm a big fan of Puccini.
There you go.
Molto bene. Well, I think that we should go ahead and get into it, guys. So let's just go over what we're going to talk about today, shall we?
Yes, we shall.
Let's do it. Well, in our first segment, we're going to talk about the Airforce that can't compel a Christian officer to get a COVID shot and judge rules. We're going to next talk about the Pope condemning assisted suicide, Italian physician-assisted suicide. Our third segment is going to be about New Black history and elevating humanism. And finally, we're going to do a strange but true Pakistan police hunt for healer who hit nail into woman's head. And
Ouch.
yeah, that sounds painful. But with all of our shows, links to today's topics and the news we discuss are available in the description below. And a reminder that if you want to come into the show prepared, you can check out the Nonprofit's Facebook fan page every Friday night for a list of the articles ahead of time. All right. So let's go ahead and move on into our first segment. And I believe, Malty, you're going to lead us in.
Sure. I'll give you a little bit of an overview. This comes from NBC News. I also pulled some from Airforce Mag, which I will have, those will both be posted. So a federal judge in Georgia has blocked the Air Force from enforcing a COVID-19 vaccine mandate. This is for a officer at Robins Air Force Base in Georgia. It's a temporary injunction that was put in place on February 15th. The officer is anonymous, but they do state that she has more than 25 years of service, is currently in reserve status, and she is suing the Defense Secretary of the Air Force, the Air Force Secretary, Surgeon General, for violation of the First Amendment rights and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. So one thing I do want to say very up front is this is a temporary injunction, even though the headline and the things we hear from her lawyer want to slant it a little bit differently.
Weird. This is so weird. And I think that the only reason why I find this very weird is that I remember I was just kind of pilfering through the Bible itself. I know, guys.
It's
I mean,
dangerous.
I know.
Hey, do what you
Reading the
want to do, man.
Bible's what made me an atheist in the first place. But I was really just trying to find something, anything that I could really turn to say, like, this getting a vaccination is definitely against Christian belief, and point to some type of religious text within the Bible that would corroborate it. I did not find any, but I did find some very weird ideas that the officer had concerning the vaccine and what it was made of. I believe that one of the things that she said in the ABC article is that receiving a vaccine that was derived from or tested on aborted fetal tissue in its development would violate her conscience and is contrary to her faith. And I and she also said that the lawsuit cites that she believes that to inject her body with a novel substance of unknown long-term effects would violate her belief that her body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. And I did want to address at least question one about the vaccines and the aborted fetal tissue testing. So, does the COVID-19 vaccines contain aborted fetal cells? The answer from the infectious disease expert and practicing Catholic James Lawler, MD, and I actually we'll have a link to this article as well, says no. The COVID-19 vaccine does not contain any aborted fetal cells. However, fetal cell lines, cells grown in a laboratory based on aborted fetal cells collected generations ago, were used in the testing during research development of the mRNA vaccines and during the production of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. It is true that decades ago, scientists decided to use fetal tissues to start the cell lines we use to test drugs today. However, the description of ongoing modern fetal tissue harvesting to create vaccines is dishonest and sensationalized. And I got that particular source from nebraskamd.com. So that will be also in the show notes. And I also wanted to address this idea about the whole body, temple, Holy Spirit thingy.
What does that
Now,
mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's
That's
a good, that's a very good question. Like, what does it necessarily mean about your body being a temple of the Holy Spirit? I believe that's Romans 12 or something to that effect. And I remember saying that a lot when I was a Christian. However, that was more, I remember that was more so in context about when I was in church, not having sex before you get married. And also making sure that the person that you do get married to is a person who also is a Christian, who believes God, who serves God, who will not do anything to violate themselves or yourself or yada skippity boo boo. That's what that scripture was mostly in context for. I'm pretty sure that you can use it for other stuff like don't do drugs and don't drink and other shit like that. But as far as like, how would you actually use it to, connote not taking the vaccine? is lost to me.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it's one of those things where
yeah,
people use it when they think it's going to help their argument, and the rest of
yeah.
their life they ignore it. Uh, if I can jump in, the other thing that
Please.
I didn't like with the title is that they it says a Christian officer.
Hmm.
In the military, there are not Christian officers and Muslim officers and atheist officers. There are officers or military members, and some of them happen to also be Christians. So I found that misleading as a title because they're not a Christian officer. And I think there's a long history that when you are in the military, some of your rights may be set aside
Hmm.
in the chain of command and the military order. And so I think someone needs to decide, are they a military officer first or are they a Christian first? And if you're a Christian above your military service duty and your obligations to the military and to your country, if that's second to being a Christian, you should quit. You should quit right now. That's the only correct path for you to take, in my opinion.
I'd agree with that. I believe that one of our hosts that normally would would happen to have been on but wasn't able to make it tonight is a is in the military, and Laura McGee actually said that military religious accommodations is not a blanket free pass to do whatever you want. It is designed to ensure that members are not being denied the reasonable practice of their religion and or not being forced to do things that's against their deeply held beliefs. However, I remember specifically when my father was in the military, and we even have our other contributor, Karen Leonard, who served in the military. There was no questions asked or even having any dialogue about any type of vaccines, examinations, or anything of that nature when it came to taking any type of medication, vaccines, or what have you when you're in the military. So this whole this actual article kind of baffles me. If this person has made a career in the military, there's a mandate to take the COVID-19 vaccine, yet you can cite religious rights in order for you to be able to utilize the blanketed term. And my question is too, and maybe you guys can go ahead and jump in on this one. How do we rectify, even though like there's a lot of people like Christian nationalists, Christian alt-right that may, cite this whole my body my choice thing when it comes to not taking the vaccine, but there have been millions of Christians and others from different religious beliefs that actually have taken the vaccine, and they're encouraging their fellow parishioners to do the same. How do we rectify that?
Well, so
Infections.
that this officer is maybe not hearing from people around her who are Christians that they're getting vaccinated as well. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, in some cases, like I don't know, but I'm just assuming that the reason why she specifically is not in the whole realm of taking the vaccine is because her religious community and also maybe other information that she's getting is saying that this vaccine is of the devil, this vaccine is against, will violate your body,
Yeah.
etc. However, there have been millions and millions of Christians and even churches that have organized their people and the neighborhoods around them to take the vaccine. So how do we how do we even have this conversation or believe or talk to people who may be of her sensibility to say, hey, there's other people that have the similar beliefs to you that took the vaccine. What do you say to them?
Hmm.
Like, are they wrong? Are
Yeah, I think one of
who's
the
wrong here?
problems is we have a very robust system of this country in this country of not basing your opinions on facts, but basing it
Mm,
on your own facts or your emotions or your religion, and not examining. Um, one thing that would be really nice is to help people learn how to evaluate things, how to look at things, how to question things. And the very idea that most religions are set up in such a way that you don't have to learn on your own. You just learn what we tell you, and we'll tell you the truth, and you just sit back and you listen to it. And I think that's something that a lot of other modern countries don't have, this system where people learn as a habit, just to listen, just to obey. And that's what, in large part, American Christianity is all about. That there's one person up front telling you what to think, how to read the Bible, what the Bible says. No, you misinterpreted the Bible. You have to believe what I tell you to believe. And you're reading the Bible wrong. And it kind of, I don't know, trains, prompts, readies, creates an environment where people are used to just believing what they're told. And I'm hoping a younger generation is learning that, every email, every text message that you get could be a scam. And so I think that's helping a lot of young people go to church and go, if everything can be a scam, this guy up on the stage, how is he not a scam? And maybe we're in the process of breaking that cycle, at least generationally. But the people that are already into this, I don't know, Cynthia. I don't have a good answer.
Yeah, and if we consider that the spread of demographics is similar in the armed forces as out, there has been quite a few people, and majority of everyone in the armed forces has been vaccinated or is being vaccinated, or there are very small amounts of people who have decided to either retire or to otherwise disengage from their military service. And in fact, that's what this person did. She had asked for an exemption. It was denied. And then she had asked for an appeal. That was denied. And then she started her retirement proceedings. Again, she has 25 years of service already in. She's a Air Force reservist. When I read that her lawyer, which is from Thomas More Society, who is these people have who they describe themselves as a non-for-profit national public interest law firm dedicated for restoring respect in law for life, family, and religious liberty. You hear any more dog whistles there? I'm gonna have to close the window.
I was just about to go, whoop.
Yeah. So I mean, they're saying that she might lose up to $1 million worth of income in retirement because she is. If she has to retire now, I mean, we're not talking about being kicked out. She's got 4 different options. One of which is retirement. One of which is to become vaccinated. But then the other thing that I noticed in this whole thing is the opinions of Tidman Eugene Self III.
Oh yeah,
who goes by Trip.
Question about that. Yeah.
Yes, U.S. District Court of Middle District of Georgia. By the way, he was appointed to the federal bench in March 12th of 2018. Just keep that in mind.
Yes.
He
know what was happening around then. Yep.
I mean, the one good thing that I did see that Self did write that this will be a narrowly tailored and will only apply to this plaintiff. This is not a broad, so it's and one of the things, and he also stated that that because there was people who had medical exemptions that the Air Force had granted, that led him to feel that it's okay for someone to have a non-medical exemption as well. So if it's going to kill you because of anaphylactics, that's a good enough reason for God to be okay to be your.
It's one of those things that almost any time I ever hear a religious exemption, I have to remind myself that there is a rule that's been made for a purpose, and you could argue whether the rule is right or wrong, for the betterment of, in this case, the organization, for society, for the individual people in it, and that anyone that claims a religious exemption is saying they don't have to comply like everyone else and do what's best for everybody. That's what a religious exemption is. Just like when you have a Christian school or a Christian daycare that doesn't have to follow the ratio of adults to children, you're saying we don't have to provide protection for our children. We don't have to provide adequate supervision for our children. We don't have to provide a fire suppression system for our children. We don't need to make sure that our kids are safe because we're Christians. And every single time an exemption like that is granted, it is likely removing a rule or regulation that was at least designed to be in the best interest of everyone involved. So I like that the judge said something about 99.76% of religious accommodation requests had been denied. I don't know if that was specific to COVID or just in general, and indicated that that shows that there's not serious consideration here. And I think what it might show, and apparently this judge needs to learn some methods of evaluating numbers and data. Maybe 99.76% of the accommodation requests are denied because they're stupid fucking requests. I don't know what the requests are. So without knowing the requests, and I don't know if the judge knew what the requests were, you're implying that because that number is big, that it's distorted and not being fair. And again, if you have to put your religion above your service in the military, leave. Just leave. Go ahead and quit. But
yeah, I think that another thing that the judge needs to do, or even the military itself, because like one of the other things that he said specifically was that the military did not offer much in response to the officer's arguments that the vaccination requirement substantially burdens her freedom of her free exercise of religion. And he said, and how could they? Very few scenarios paint a bleaker picture than giving up your livelihood in order for you to follow your religious beliefs. But well, one of the things that I really believe that could even quell this whole issue is like, for whomever that was doling out the mandate, or enforcing the mandate to say like, hey, you need to go ahead and get this vaccine, and even the judge could make themselves a bit more informed when it comes to the whole idea behind these particular vaccines, because it's a pretty hot topic. And it's not like the information concerning what's in the vaccines, how it's been developed, uh, a bunch of different medical and scientific professionals who have weighed in on these vaccines, who developed it, even knowing that mRNA technology has been around for a very long time. This is not a novel approach when it comes to developing vaccines at all. I mean, it was even used to be studied on flu, on Zika, on megalovirus, CMV. Like all these particular things have been cited as far as like mRNA technology in of itself. And also, we have a very long history of eradicating diseases with vaccines, like smallpox, like polio, getting measles, mumps, and rubella under control because we give babies and children vaccines. This is how we get rid of diseases and things that cause us ill will. And even citing that we don't know what the long-term effects are concerning this specific vaccine, it's not really that far-fetched to look at our history with vaccines and what the long-term effects were from there. But usually, majority of the time, the effects of actually getting rid of a disease versus someone having an adverse effect that affects them worse for the rest of their life is in the minor. And I don't and I don't necessarily understand, and maybe because I'm a skeptic, I'm an atheist, whatever. I don't necessarily understand why we have to insert religion into this conversation, politics into this conversation at all. It is a public health crisis that should be taken care of as much as possible so that we can actually get back to the closest thing to normalcy.
I just had a crazy idea to combine the story with current events. What if we could take some fetal cell tissue and mix it in water and then create a big circle around the nation's capital? And that way, no Christian nationalists can cross that line and get near the Capitol because they'd have to cross a barrier of fetal tissue.
Oh my goodness.
They might actually
I'll let
step
you
on it.
handle that, Phil. You handle that.
That's how we keep them out.
You know,
Oh my
one
gosh.
thing,
Go ahead.
one
Ross.
thing that that Laura did, I put in her notes that is a good point, is that the military requires more vaccinations than any other establishment that she knows of. And when I think of someone who has been in the military for 25 years, which means that she has seen deployment to active areas, or I'm assuming that she saw deployment to some areas of activity. She had, why this one? Why now?
Because she's
You know,
radicalized.
The only thing that I can see is that this is somewhat politicized, even though the judge says this is going to be narrowly applied. It smacks to me of the Republican blitz of trying to get things on the books to be knocked down or not, so they can claim precedence. And that's what scares me, is just this death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah, I have to agree, Malty. But Phil, so I'm going to give the final word to you, and then we're going to move on to the next segment.
In a rare moment of honesty, I have no further comment.
Oh wow!
What's that?
Okay.
Don't tell anybody.
And as a former housewife that lived in Atlanta said, I said what I said. Moving on.
Excellent. Our story number 2, if that's where I'm supposed to go next, talks about. Yes.
But
we have a
before
break?
we actually go into story number 2, I got a few things that I got to say.
You do it.
That's what they pay me the big bucks for. And I could even pay like even more than what never mind.
Yeah.
I was trying to insert a joke. It didn't pan out. But guys, share the link to our channel with your friends and your family and your coworkers. That neighbor guy you don't like, anyone and everyone. Let's get the word out there so that you can help with our fundraisers. If you all have noticed that we actually were able to get over 10,000 subscribers. It's a push that we were going for. We finally made it. We're here. We have arrived. We want 10,000 more, 20,000, 30,000. Let's make it even multiple. But the only way that we can do that is with your help. And also, if you want to give to the fundraisers, there is going to be a button that you can actually go to below our window, and you can go ahead and click upon it and give to the ACA. Everything that you give to us is definitely going to help the mission to push positive atheism. And also, if you actually can share the link and give to the fundraiser, also what costs you no money at all is to subscribe to the channel. Yes, people, please subscribe and like the button. Put the like button on. Like the button and push the like button. Okay? Do both. Like I like that button. I like it so much I'm gonna push it. So yes, push the like button, and then also below is the notification bell. Go ahead and click on that too, so that every time that we actually are premiering a show, you're going to get a notification that says that, hey, we are on, and we premiere a show every Sunday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now, also, I don't know if you guys know, but are you aware that the atheist community of Austin has another YouTube channel? Did you know? Did you know?
News to me. What's going on?
Okay, well, I'm about to tell you about it because
Tell
you
me.
should be aware, Phil. Malty already knows, but you should be
Yeah.
aware, and other people, you should be aware as well. So
I'm talking
check
about
out.
AEN.
Yes, I am. I'm talking
Oh,
about AEN. So check out the Atheist Experience Network, a channel where you can find all ACA shows in podcast form. Subscribe to tiny.cc/AEN podcast to listen to the episodes of the nonprofits, the Atheist Experience, Secular Sexuality, Truth Wanted, and all of our ACA shows so you don't miss a single episode.
The more
It's
you know.
okay.
The more you know.
Right. I just need the star just to go around the, but that's all. That's neither here nor there. Now, let's go ahead and go into segment number 2. Phil, take us away.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, I knew when I saw this headline that included the Pope, assisted suicide, and Italy all together. I had to jump in, and I was lucky enough to be able to go read some alternate sources than the one that was listed, including a couple of articles that I read, at least kind of read as best as I could do in Italian. So that was great fun to kind of go more back to the source. A couple of things I want to give a little bit of background on this. The story goes all the way back to 2014. In 2014, a gentleman named Fabiano Antoniani, also known as DJ Fabo, which I love that, DJ Fabo, he had a terrible auto accident and became a quadriplegic and also blind from this accident. And it left him, as he put it, and this is a quote from him, "I feel like I'm in a cage. I would like to choose to die without suffering." And so this is a pretty extreme case. This is not someone going, "Oh, I think I want to die today." Although, of course, as I did that, how horrible am I to do that? It's a very serious issue, but he felt like life would be better. 3 years later, another person, Marco Capato, yeah, Marco Capato, took him to Switzerland because it is legal to end your life by choice in Switzerland. And when he returned back to Italy, he turned himself in for what he believed was an intentional violation of an unjust law. And that started a court case, and it went all the way through September of 2019 when the Italian court ruled that what he did was not a crime. And the courts, and of course, how their court relates to their parliament is obviously different than ours. The court threw it back to the parliament and said, this guy didn't break a law because there needs to be some room for exceptions where in extreme cases this is allowed, which our Supreme Court might not ever do. But so it got kicked back to the parliament, and they've been kicking this for 3 years now. And the Pope and the Catholic Church has put their 2 cents in more than one time on this over the last several years. And it basically falls to a very standard Catholic concept that, that you can't leave early. You can only go when God takes you. The fascinating thing, you can take medicine that delays God taking you, but you can't go early. So kind of like Mother Teresa, I don't care how much you're suffering. I don't care how much pain you're in. I don't care how little you can move around or have no use of your legs or arms. That's not important. What is important is that we do everything to keep you alive, no matter how much you are suffering. And I was offended by that concept when Mother Teresa employed it. I'm offended to it now. And, I'm sure everyone's heard this before. We don't treat our pets like this. If you have a cat or a dog, a horse, a cow, whatever this situation is for you, a ferret.
Humane.
Yeah.
If you know that they're at end of life, now he may not have been at end of life per se, but he perceived that he was in a cage and he had no way out. And he didn't want to do that anymore. And I have to respect that. Now, of course, there should be rules and regulations, and there's got to be a medical board and some people that are independent reviewing this so it doesn't get crazy. But we need to have globally, in Italy, of course, and it would also be nice in the United States, death with dignity. that if you meet certain criteria and certain conditions, you should have the ability to control the termination of your own life on your own terms. But what do you guys think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I know I've lost two close family members, both to cancer, and one went on palliative care, and one decided to, that was the non-religious one, and a religious one was getting electrolytes and drips when hardly couldn't keep any food down at all. But yeah, it was a bunch of suffering by everyone involved. And yes, it just does not make any sense to me that when the palliative care was administered and was administered correctly, at that point in time, even though the flesh was still there, there really wasn't much of him left, my father.
Yeah.
And when my sister was in such pain and so weak, I didn't see much of her either. So I just don't get it. That Francis could say that what did he say? His quote here: "We have to be careful not to confuse this help with unacceptable deviations that lead to killing. We must accompany death, not provoke death.
We must accompany death." Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? Accompany death. Malty, I share your sentiment. I lost my father to cancer. I took care of him for about a year before he passed away, and I agree. As time went on, he got quieter and quieter, and the man that I knew as a child and a teenager, and this indomitable force to be reckoned with, just melted away, and then he was gone, and the only thing that we could have done is just to give him morphine when he was in pain, and we had to do everything for him because he wasn't able to do anything for himself.
Yeah.
And yeah, Phil, you're right. We don't even treat animals that way.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't. I can think of, like, I had a dog who had tumors in her stomach, and there was no way to treat her without it severely, causing even further damage. And the only other thing that we could do was euthanize her, and she was in pain all the time, and to the point where, like, all that glimmer, all of the fervor that she had just, like, went away. And so, in order to keep her from experiencing more pain and suffering, the humane thing to do was to help her end her life. And I don't understand why we can't, in some cases, take this same sentiment that we have for our pets and and be able to actually apply it to our fellow human being. That makes no sense.
It's not even, and it's even one step removed from that, because it's in your pet. You are making a decision on their behalf, where you're allowing someone to make a decision for themselves.
That is correct.
I unfortunately share life experiences similar to both of you, where I've watched parents pass away. In the last couple of days for my mom, it was a given outcome that within 3 to 4 days she was going to die, and we sat and we waited, and she suffered for 3 or 4 days. And I remember, within the last day of her life, the pain kept getting worse and worse as things were breaking down and probably rotting away on the inside. At one point, she was in pain, and I called a nurse. And the nurse came in, and I said, "She's still in pain, and she needs more morphine." And she goes, "Great, I'll go get it." She comes back, she looks at the clock, and then she stops and says, "I can't give her more morphine yet." And I said, why not? She goes, well, I have to wait 4 hours or whatever the time period was to give another injection of morphine. And I said, why do you have to wait? She goes, well, that's the rules. And I go, well, what's the possible side effect? What's the negative that makes you wait? Well, if we give her too much morphine, she could, and then she didn't want to finish the sentence. I knew where she was going. If you give someone too much morphine, you could die. They could die. And I was like, well, then give it to her. Find a whole bunch more. Bring some in. Let's shoot her up. And there's no reason to make her just sit there for 24 more hours in pain and agony. It's just heartbreaking. I'm going to kind of go back to the story real quick, and you guys can give comments on this. I would love to hear that as well. This is one of those things that, since I know Italy kind of okay, the article and other articles often would talk about how Catholic Italians are. They're culturally Catholic. They don't like the Catholic Church. And in case you didn't know, the Vatican, the land owned by the Catholic Church, is deemed a separate country because Italy gave it to them. They're not part of Italy. They're encircled by Italy. And there was also this study that said 92% of Italians were in favor of some kind of rule or law that let people die with dignity. So only 8% of people in Italy were opposed to this. So when they had these stories or verbiage that I think maybe Americans were adding, just assuming, well, Italy's a very Catholic country. Sure they are. Every single person in Italy is probably deemed a member of the Catholic Church, unless they've asked to leave. But there's a reason that their great big churches are great tourist sites, because there's no parishioners. They're freaking empty always. And when you go in there and look around, they're amazing, but there's not people because they don't go to services very much.
Yeah. I wanted to try to even come up with some type of idea of where this notion of frowning upon suicide comes. Uh, I can't help but to go back to the Bible. I dived into an article that was posted by Christian Today concerning suicide. And when I was reading the article and just looking at like some of the adjacent Bible verses or biblical verses, uh, again, nothing to state this whole notion that what I was taught when I was in Catholic school, and also when I was just a non-denominational Christian, that if you kill yourself, you're going to hell, because that is a violation of God's commandment to not murder. And I, but at the same time, the thou shalt not murder has a loophole, because as we know that God has commanded the Israelites to go into lands and kill women and men and children, when it
Genocide.
suited him, right, to commit genocide. Hey, what's up, Canaanites? Oh, there are none. So so I didn't really think that was a really good argument to say that, this is something that's going to happen. I mean, even if we go through the whole notion of hell and when that even became a thing, but one of the things that I said is that if God is an all-loving, knowing, and present God, what is the purpose of prolonging a person's suffering from a terminal illness that causes them grief and pain? Even if one grants the possibility of God being Jehovah Rapha, Exodus 15:26, if thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and wilt do which is right in his sight, he will give ear to his commandments and keep all his statutes. I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the God, the Lord that healeth thee. But if we even look empirically at people who are getting sick and people who are not actually recovering from their illnesses, I have not found an influx of Christians or Catholics or the like, or what have you, just being supernaturally healed from terminal illnesses.
No.
So what? why even? So I want to say, Pope Francois. Why even weigh in on on this?
He can't help
It's
himself.
I guess. But what are we
Well,
gonna
I
say,
mean,
Malty?
I find that that the Christianity or in more so Catholicism really has this hard on for noble suffering,
Yes.
or the idea of noble suffering, and they don't seem to understand the difference between that you can suffer nobly, but just the act of suffering is not noble.
Right.
And but I'm really how they did it. Just that is one thing I just that a lot of it is just and I hear it in other ways too. Of I suffered, so it's okay for you to suffer. It's just like we and it's just like no, you're just or I suffered more, so your suffering is not as noble. It's not a fucking race.
Yeah, it's a contest. It's not a contest.
It's not a contest.
No,
It's
it's
not a
not a
contest.
contest.
But I would like to know where we're at on this legislation. It is currently being adjudicated, or it's currently being talked about, right?
Yeah,
In
I
the
think
Italian.
it's been proposed in multiple different forms, and it just hasn't achieved a majority or the support, or it gets delayed and tabled. Just kind of like how our government works. That it's bouncing around, and I think
Mhm.
the politicians are trying to weigh off the pros and cons of offending, a portion of the population that is very Catholic versus doing the right thing, which is
Mhm.
what we almost always have.
Right. So right
Yeah.
now, they're trying to decriminalize assisted suicide under certain conditions, if I'm
Right.
got this correct, so that if the local board think that it is ethical to do so, and the courts need to make it's not a court thing; it needs to go to the parliament, and that we need to allow terminally ill patients to seek assisted suicide through the national health system. And that's, I think, another part of it is that they have national health. So
What a novel idea.
yeah. And of course, we want to protect any doctors that are trying to help these people do things correctly to again decrease their suffering and not inadvertently increase their suffering
Right.
by a botched job.
Well, I wanted to pilfer again from Laura's notes. I thought that one of the things that she said is that she agreed that assisted suicide should be regulated. We should not make it any easier than absolutely necessary to end a human life. But there needs to be room for exception that is designed to be moral and compassionate. What is more moral, forcing someone to continue to live in pain and suffering against their own wishes, or allowing them to decide for themselves when to end the suffering and how?
I think that's really well said. Thank you for reading that. And it kind of comes down to a lot of things with religious regulations. If you think that assisted suicide or euthanasia is immoral and you don't want to do it, then don't fucking do it. But why do you got to make a law that compels everyone else to live by your moral and ethical standard? Does that come from a 3,000-year-old book? But that's just me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? And that's a mic drop moment. And
There you go.
Malty, if you okay with making that the final word, I'm okay with it. You okay with it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
All
think
right.
so.
Yeah, because I don't know what else to say about that. So before we move on, guys, let's just take a break in our conversation. And if you didn't tune into the other ACA shows last week, here is what you missed.
Well, you can't be gay. You have biological children. You've obviously had sex with a woman. I'm like, yeah, at least 3 times. Bravo on the math, bud. Like, people are allowed to change.
In science, you don't start with an answer. You start asking questions to try to determine the answer. And when new evidence becomes available, you sharpen or even adjust or change the answer. That's the beauty of science.
Hard Christian nationalism that we were hearing in America, we're now hearing all the way up in Canada as well.
Hey,
like, so it spreads.
We had QAnoners in Ottawa for the last week and a half. You know, it's
honking their horns and pooping on
it's
things.
not just an American problem.
The world is so cruel, it's so evil. Why did God create it this way? But if we were like a little, like some weird crab monster that have evolved instead, then we might just be like, oh, well, yeah, you know, who cares? Like, I eat my own kids all the time.
Then you were lying before, and then you lied again when I told you that you were lying about it, because you don't get to call it Noah's Ark, and you don't get to say it was Noah's Ark, and then acknowledge, as you've done twice now, that there's no way to demonstrate that it is Noah's Ark. Why are you lying for Jesus?
Previously on The Atheist Experience.
You're on with me and Seth, so what have you got for us?
Oh, you said Seth?
Yeah, Seth Andrews.
Okay, I don't think I know him, but I just want to make sure I got his name correct. Yeah, I went to your site, and you have "What do you believe?" ? And why. And so the question comes up of, you know, how do we even get the start of it?
And now, Truth Wanted, Revenge of the Seth.
Jacob, you're live on Truth Wanted.
Hi, Seth, and I don't know your name. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that in the
Dang! Jacob, you came on the show, dude. You just came for. Oh my God! You just followed.
Oh, that's my new ringtone.
You think
that's
I just
my
want
new
Seth
ringtone.
on for clout?
Awesome.
Is that
No.
what it is?
Thank you,
oh
Jacob.
Oh my God!
And we are back.
Good stuff.
Oh, goodness. Honking horns and pooping on things. I thought that was going to be the best, and then I saw Seth Andrews.
And I don't know if I can tell. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I am super relaxed right now because Seth's voice is the most relaxing thing that I've ever encountered.
In person, he sounds like Donald Duck. It's the craziest thing.
Oh wow!
Trade secret.
It's all post processing and
that's right. That's it. Get it in post.
Oh my goodness. Well, if that's the case, I want the microphone that he got.
Yeah.
Maybe next time when I see him, I'm going to ask him about that. All right, guys. Well, if you're ready, we can go ahead and move on to segment 3.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And this is entitled New Black History and Elevating Humanism. And this is so exciting, guys, because this is actually from thehumanist.com. And it was written by the friend of the show and a friend of mine and a friend of the ACA, president and founder, Miss Mendiza Thomas. So this particular article was actually reposted in February the 15th of 2022. And it actually talked about how Black History Month should not only just be like the same thing that we would normally see a lot, like, oh, we're going to talk about Dr. King, we're going to talk about Malcolm X, we're going to talk about Frederick Douglass, we're going to talk about, you know, all that other great stuff. And and just to preface that, Mendiza Thomas is the president and founder of the Black Non-Believers, established in 2011. And going back to what I was talking about previously concerning the article, that she starts out, I'm just going to read a little bit from it. For Black History Month in 2012, African Americans for Humanism, now defunct, launched a major marketing campaign featuring billboards and public transportation ads in 7 major U.S. cities. The campaign focused on historic figures and modern-day individuals who have questioned religion. 10 years later, in 2022, Black atheists, humanists, free-thinking voices are now more publicly acknowledged. And this is in no small part due to the work of organizers like the Black Non-Believers and Black Skeptics, who have broken barriers with features in major media publications, including the one that we're the one with 5 Fierce Humanists cover story in 2018, and events like Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference, which I had the pleasure of speaking at. And she goes on to say that my organization, the Black Nonbelievers, has particularly focused on increasing the presence of atheists and religious doubters in the Black community, as well as providing much needed support and empowerment. We also prominently highlight Blacks who historically have either never believed or have shed their religious identities over time. It is important to acknowledge and educate others about these iconic figures who have contributed much to our country's framework and yet had little to no belief whatsoever. And I'm going to go ahead and stop right there so we can open up the floor. But but one of the things that I did want to read a little bit from Laura's notes, and then I'm going to move it on to Malty and Phil, that she said that this is a great article for showcasing efforts in educating and advocating. But I think that there's an underlining message that is even more important. Marginalized groups suffer so many injustices and have many unique struggles that people outside the group cannot fully understand. But when you are a marginalized group within that group, the struggle intensifies. People who are Black and LGBTQ or Black and atheists have so much more to contend with than is already stratifying and institutionalized forms of racism and discrimination. Add to that women, disabled, foreign accent, or trouble speaking English, mental health concerns, the issues compound. And she wanted to go forth about talking about the mental and social implications. But one of the things that I really do like about this article is that it really got a chance to highlight the work that's really being done in advocating for people who are agnostic, who are skeptics, who are free thinkers, who happen to look like me. And because often, as Mandisa said, is that we don't necessarily get a chance to really learn about or really celebrate, iconic figures from our past that had a huge impact on basically the discourse of advocacy, specifically for African Americans throughout American history. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and football it to my colleagues as we discuss all this other stuff. And I'm going to actually send it over to you, Malty, if you don't mind taking it away.
Yeah. I read Mandisa's piece, and what it did is it kind of allowed me, as definitely not as from an outsider looking in, to get some perspective of that. But it also got me looking down some rabbit holes, and I came across some legislation that I didn't know about, or if I did, I had forgot, which is House Resolution 40, and the push by the NAARC for it to actually get to be presented on the floor. For those of you that don't know, that the NAARC,
Yeah,
NARC, is the National African American Reparations Commission.
Yeah.
And they're pushing this bill to establish a commissional study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans, just as we had with Japanese Americans for reparations for what was that? What was the name of that bill? 9066, where they had all of their rights taken away from them, and they were put in internment camps in War II. In fact, that we just had the anniversary of the signing of that bill this month. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, so I thought it was very interesting. Listen to Representative Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas talking about it. She's heading, I think, a push for this to be brought before the full House. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad that there is things moving forward, and that we have things like as many people, Human Rights Watch, the American Humanist Association, over 360 national, international, state, and local organizations have signed on to this, saying that they want it to be heard. So it's again, what they want to do is establish an expert commission just to study the legacy of slavery and how it failed to address the harms that stemmed from it, such as which are innumerable, and I'm sure we'll get into.
Sure thing. I would love to touch a little bit on HR 40. I was saying on the green room that HR 40 was actually a bill that was introduced to the floor at first in 1989 after the Japanese bill, the Civil Liberties Bill of 1988, was signed by Ronald Reagan. And with that particular history of that bill, and that was actually to pay Japanese Americans who were either interned or their immediate descendants reparations for the harm that was exacted from the event that happened in the early 40s during World War II. Because Japan, as we know, was part of the Axis powers aligned with Germany. And it was a panic even for actual citizens who happened to be of Japanese descent, who were interned, their rights were taken away, their property was taken away, and they were interned for about 5 years. I want to say up to 5 years. I may be wrong. Somebody can correct me. But so when they established a commission, went around the country and actually spoke on the ills and the harms that happened to being exacted, and then the commission came up with recommendations, and at that particular time it was decided to go ahead and pay out about $20,000 per person or their descendant if that person is no longer living, and then that also extended into, I believe, like others like from Guam, and I believe that there was a revisitation to that particular bill under Obama that paid out additional funds. So Representative John Conyers got the idea like, hey, I want to see if we can do something similar for African Americans who were descended from enslaved Africans or descendants of chattel slavery, as far as to put together a commission to study what slavery reparations should look like. Now, the only difference between there's a lot of differences specifically between what happened with the Japanese bill and HR 40 in itself. One of the things that the Japanese bill is that it was an open commission, and they actually went out and interviewed several people that can come to open sessions in order for them to weigh in on this particular event. In HR 40, you don't have that. They want closed sessions. Another thing is that they are not really specific on exactly who we're naming when it comes to the harms, because there are representatives of Narcan and Cobra who have this idea of like, okay, well, any person who identifies as Black or African American should be able to receive some type of reparations, because slavery and racism hurts a lot of us, right? But that is not the intent of any reparations repair bill that has happened in the United States since 1789. All of them were specific. We named specifically the injured party, and then we went on to discover a discovery on exactly what the harm was, and then addressed it accordingly. And so that's just like a couple of tidbits, because I want Phil to weigh in on this too about HR 40. In actuality, there is a better bill. There is a better bill that's actually in the works that is trying to be pushed. However, HR 40 is just not a good one. But I will definitely say that having the conversation about really addressing the harms that have been done to African Americans, especially those who come from chattel slavery, because that was the original harm that was exacted on this group of people, has to be discussed. And we really have to address it in a holistic manner. And yeah, I'm going to shut up now. Phil, what you got to say?
It reminded me. I heard a documentary, like an NPR thing, where there's a lot of families in the South, a lot of African American families that were awarded land after the Civil War, and that meant everything to them and their family. And so they kept it in the family, and each child, each marriage, the land, everyone got to share in it. 20, 40, 50, 80, 100 people got to share in this land, and it became a home for everybody. And what would happen occasionally is that some family member who, didn't get along with everybody or just needed some money would sell their portion. So if there's 100 people involved, they would sell their 1% of land, and that person would then make a claim with the courts that they want to sell their 1%. And the other 99 people said, well, it's all one big thing. You can't just sell 1% of it. And they would hire attorneys, and the poor families that never really thought about dividing up the land get thrown into court and have to hire attorneys. And it ends up that the land gets sold and everybody gets cashed out, but the heritage is gone. What you had for your family is stripped away from you by kind of a weird quirk in how the land was or wasn't divided up correctly. And there's this endless string of disadvantages. Yeah, disadvantages, racism. You can't buy houses in neighborhoods. It hasn't happened to me lately, but the second or third house I wanted to buy, we actually had a real estate agent tell us which areas we probably should look at and which areas we should avoid because they had a lot of black people in it. And I thought, what year are we in? It still happens today. And it doesn't mean that if you've done well and successful that you fought against the system and achieved it where everyone else could. I think sometimes there's other people that they can't. They don't have a way out of it. It's very easy to accept all the advantages that I have had and just say, well, I worked on really hard on top of that, and other people could work hard. But it's really hard to work hard when your parents have no money, when your parents leave you homeless, or you don't have any parents, or you're in a community with high drug problems. You're in a community that no one wants to teach. So how do you learn all the things? No one is there to help you. You're just every little step of the way. There's just a thumb on the scale pushing you down. And it's very easy for someone in a very luxurious position like myself to skip and not see all that. It's there. I've seen it. I've seen people being hired in the corporate world in actual big companies where a white man gets more than a black man, where a white man gets more than a white woman. And it's this little stuff that stacks up. I mean, that's all on top of chattel slavery, because if you start from that position, that's a hard place to go. And I think that we definitely should have the commission of some kind, and it should be examined. And I'm probably going to lean towards the fact that there's some money due. There's some financial assistance that's due to some people that have had the thumb on the scale pushing against them. And I think it's only fair. The last thought kind of in general in this concept, it is amazing how quickly people, and I don't mean just Americans, but this podcast is mostly watched by people in the United States, how quickly we can turn on the other. We got to move past that shit, people. Everybody's a human being. Watch more fucking Star Trek and Doctor Who if you have to. Get it into your head that, we're all trying to get along on this globe, and we should be fucking helping each other, not fighting people back that want to take what they want to take. They want to share in what we've got. We should be a little more interested in our fellow human beings. Sorry, my rant's over.
No, you're good. I've been caping for the Federation to come quick, fast, in a hurry for a while now, because this I don't particularly care for. I don't like personally going to the whole oppression Olympics, right? But it definitely has to be addressed that there are definitely divides when it comes to certain groups of people versus another, and a lot of those divides are designed, like especially like when you were talking about the real estate agency.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with a young person, because I'm going to call them young because they're younger than me, so they're a young person who is studying to be a lawyer. They're in law school right now. And then we had a conversation debation about systemic racism. And they flat out told me that, oh, systemic racism doesn't exist anymore.
Oh my God.
You know, and the argument was that point out one law that actually shows that this has happened, that this is happening now. And I said that, well, there were several policies and laws that actually help build in the issue concerning racism. However, what happens is that when you have things like redlining, when you have things like land
Crack cocaine
theft,
laws.
yes, when you have like the war on drugs and then
Yep.
mass incarceration and you know, and you have like the racial wealth gap, which is currently African Americans only hold less than 2% of the wealth in the entire nation, yet they make up almost 13% of the population. So the wealth share is not even compensatory to the population share. And we can really point to different events and design and that has happened. You know, when it comes to like these particular issues that has transpired. So, you know, we can't just necessarily just like say, oh, racism is over, systemic racism is over because we had the Civil Rights Act of 1964, right? You know, but we do definitely have a codifying of practices, as Phil even pointed out with his real estate agent saying you don't necessarily want to move there because there's a lot of Black people that live there, right? Or and I can even point to other like examples of real estate agents or even African Americans who have homes what they're trying to sell and their properties are valued way less than some of their white counterparts.
Yes.
You know, so they
That's
can
regular.
even I even have, this is an anecdote. My father was, I talk about this. My father was a veteran and tried to use the GI Bill in order for him to buy a house, and he was denied and never told why. Come to find out, there was a lot of African American vets who did not get a chance to take advantage of the GI Bill, and not only that is that as I started working even in the college industry when I first got out of school, found out that the GI Bill, there's benefits that not only would help the veteran, but help their children. So there could have been like some benefits that I could have garnered from, you know, my father being a veteran that I never received. And unfortunately, this was a widespread practice. But I can go on, and I do apologize about that, guys. But you know, but one of the things I will say, specifically going back to the article, is that when we are thinking about like Black History Month, and you know, we use the shortest, coldest month of the year to talk about Black history. One of the things that I do want to remind people is that Black history is American history. You know, African Americans fought in every war. African American slaves built the White House. An African American man, Benjamin Banneker, designed the Capitol. We have been. I can enlist like a litany of inventions that were happening over by African Americans. I mean, the traffic light, the refrigerator, the ice cream scooper, for Pete's sake. Like, y'all know you want your ice cream, but you know, but one of the things that I would also say is that we had African American free thinkers that was very much so integral to this discourse of civil rights, like James Baldwin, like Hubert Harrison, who was like one of the first outspoken atheists, originally from Jamaica, who actually was pushing a socialist free thought movement here in the United States, like Butterfly McQueen, like Zora Neale Hurston, like Lorraine Hansberry, like Langston Hughes. Matter of fact, I had poem that I wanted to read really quickly, and then I'm going to shut up. I promise you I will. But one of the things that he said in the poem is called Goodbye Christ. He said, "Goodbye Christ Jesus, Lord God Jehovah. Beat it on away from here now. Make way for a new guy with no religion at all. A real guy named Marx, communist, Lenin, peasant, Stalin, worker, me. I said me. Go ahead now. You getting in the way of things, Lord. And please take Saint Gandhi with you when you go. The Saint Pope Pius, the Saint Ami McPherson, and the big black Saint Becton on the consecrated dime. And step on the gas, Christ. Move." And
Wow.
with that being said, I'm going to go around the room and you guys have your final thoughts, and we're going to move around.
The one thing that stuck in my mind when you were talking was especially about getting mine and not caring what the those that have less, whether or not they get theirs, or pushing people down to get ahead, is that we do not need to be in this situation where it's us or them, or it's other. We are not in a zero-sum game, and when we look out and 40% of the food that we produce here in the US is going into the garbage before it goes onto the table. You can't tell me that we're in a zero-sum game. There's so much waste, and and I don't mean that just in that type of consumerism, but as so much a waste of opportunity when people are not provided with the basic needs that they have to not just survive but excel. So I'm hoping that whether it be HR 40 or other legislation that's better will help facilitate that.
Yeah. And Phil,
right.
what you got?
I did my rant, and I don't have anything valuable enough to follow up the two of you, so I'm just going to leave it like that.
Well, I will just say this, that I want to also give another quote from Hubert Harrison. It should seem that Negroes of all Americans would be found in the free thought fold, since they have suffered more than any other class of Americans from the dubious blessings of Christianity. And I just wanted to say that with the rise of the nones, the agnostics, and the atheists in the Black community, my hope is that us who are not of the 79% of Christian believers, according to the Pew Research, would grow to have a voice and really have our thoughts and ideas represented on the larger scale in American society and worldwide.
Very good.
All right. So, my friends, yeah. I know that we're running kind of low on time, and we did want to kind of do like a little bit of the strange but true, but we'll still leave the article in the show notes for you guys to actually take a look at it. Maybe just for kicks and giggles. Do we want to just go ahead and just play the little?
Oh, we can run through
cartoon?
this really, really fast, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Come
Palate
on.
cleanser.
You nailed it.
Let's go ahead. Yeah, you nailed it. Really, let's hear it. Strange but true.
Strange but true.
Okay. So, faith healers abound, and not only in the U.S., but other places as well, like Pakistan, where a woman was admitted to the hospital with a 2-inch nail driven into her head. This was done deliberately, and this was done with her permission, supposedly, I guess. And it was done because it was told to her by a faith healer that in doing so, this will make sure that she has a boy child. Yep. Guess she didn't understand how that whole sex thing works, but and it just gets stranger and stranger. So she goes to the hospital, the Lady Reading Hospital in Pakistan, bleeding from the skull. She had told them that she had done it herself, but then after further investigation, that the doctors were saying that wasn't possible. Only after it was posted on social media were the police involved, because they saw it there on social media and started asking, why didn't you come to us with this? And then they were wanting to now use closed circuit television to try to track the woman's passage back, to try to find out where she was and who may have done this to her. So in a discussion with the medical professionals, it came to light that this was not the first person that this faith healer said that he had done this to, and that it had worked. I feel really sorry for the woman who was feeling so concerned that her husband would leave her if she had a fourth girl, and that she would go to such lengths of to do this. But wow, people can.
There's so much in there. It kind of, for me, ties back to this idea of education and knowing how to evaluate the world. How did we get to a position where apparently both the husband and wife don't understand how genetics and male versus female gender works? Clearly that's the case. She felt put out because there wasn't a male child, which is another problem in many cultures. That's something we should fix. And then that going to a faith healer was a good idea. And then at some point, her and or some people around her had to know that the nail was going to get pounded into her skull, and allowed it, and then realized it was a problem. That might be the smartest thing that was done. Goes to the hospital. And why is the hospital not on the phone immediately? As soon as the patient is stable and safe and their life is protected, the first thing after that you should do is have the police show up, because whoever the fuck did this needs to be put in jail and eliminated from exposure to the rest of the general population. But they're like, no, this happens from time to time. We take the nail out and send them home. Really? That's what we do? Oh, my God.
I'm going to pilfer again from Miss McGee's notes. One of the things that she said about this particular article is that she said there was like 2 lines of conversation that should be addressed concerning all of this: trust in faith healers and the cultural valuing of males above females.
Yeah.
And she talked about how like male children are prized above female children in a lot of different nations. Pakistan is not the only one, right? We can even see like how there's even like a gender divide when it comes to pay and what women are able to do versus what men are able to do, like even in the United States, which is supposed to be enlightened. That's a whole nother discussion. And then there's another problem concerning medical ignorance. Like, why in the world, like as you just mentioned, Phil, the person just be sent home after they get the nail out? Or even, how is it that we are not even seeing how like driving a nail into a person's head is a problem in the first place, and it doesn't fix anything? Like, I'm not really sure how in the world, and I don't even know what the rationale was. I didn't really see that inside the article itself, that why would one, even who considers themselves a faith healer, would think that producing a male child will come from driving a nail in someone's head. I don't understand that.
I got nothing.
Malty?
Yep. Yeah, very strange and sadly true.
Yeah. Well, guys, we want to end
Belief,
it on a
like
high
you
note.
say, Phil, belief in faith healers can lead to tragic results. This is, it's just the number of errors that just compounded in this entire article is just amazing.
Yeah,
Indeed,
it's
it is.
clearly a systemic thing, just like
Yeah.
systemic racism. And circling back to that, I still can't get over how sometimes people say that it's been fixed or it's gone or it doesn't exist. You're kidding yourself. You're totally naive and ignorant. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But there are good things. But we're here sometimes to tell you the stories so that you can be aware of what's going on out there, and keep an eye out for it.
Indeed. This is what we're here for, people. And, we don't want the conversations to stop here. We really want you guys to continue to actually be involved with the conversations that we're having, because we value everything that you guys say. So, first off, I want to implore you to join our fan social media outlets. You can find most of the nonprofit hosts on the atheist community of Discord by going to tiny.cc/ACD Discord and on Facebook at tiny.cc/FBNP. Also, we really value guys' feedback. So tell us what you like and what you don't like in the comments, or you can email us at nonprofits@atheist-community.org. And I just also want to say that I want emails, I want comments, and if you guys email us, we actually read them on the air. When we actually get like a mailbag, we want to use the mailbag interstitial more often. So I'm going to implore you. I don't know. We may have to do a prize or something like that. Like, email like the most email. I don't know. We'll discuss it. But before we guys go, let's go ahead and just get some final thoughts before we get this road on the show. Malty.
Final thoughts from me. Thank you both for joining me for this bit of a heavy episode, but I think well worth it. What did we talk about? I mean, lots of people who just wanted to find their own words, from the Pope to this Christian Air Force person. Thank you for enlightening me so much, Cynthia, on the new Black history. And Pakistan does not seem to always comes through with something amazing. I'll put it that way.
And Phil, what you got?
Just be better humans. Love each other. Don't worry about grabbing all that you can get just for yourself. Try to find a way to help somebody. It really makes a difference. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed our time together.
Phil, you were a delight, and Malty, you're always a delight, and you all in the audience are even more delightful. How about that? And you guys, I also just echo the sentiments of my colleagues here, our panelists here. Let's be better. Let's be better human beings. Let's be better to each other, and really let us, have conversations about making people whole. Especially when we know empirically when we have done harm to others. And as we will say, you guys, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the Nonprofits. We really do appreciate you all coming back week after week to hear us blab all day. Well, no, just for like 90 minutes. Until next time, we will see you on the other side. Bye-bye.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.